Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn, and I run the services at MedCommsNetworking.com, where you'll find a range of activities, services for the global MedComms community, by which I'm talking medical communications, medical publishing, medical education, a range of services online, activities, face-to-face meetings, and so on, are constantly happening. What I'm doing at the moment is running these Zoom meetings, which is a great way of reaching out to more people in more places. And where we can, we record them and we post them on NetworkPharma TV. So we've got an audience with us today, which is great. But if you're watching the recording, that's also great. And for those of you who haven't caught up with all the webinars, you can go back and catch up at NetworkPharma TV. So today, I'm absolutely delighted we've got Steve Doyle with us. I should start by saying that Steve did a webinar with us a few weeks ago when he talked about the profile, the LinkedIn profile. So today, we're going to talk more about the communication strategy. But you can find his previous recording on NetworkPharma TV, as I say. So on that note, Steve, I'm going to hand over to you to take us away, introduce yourself and with your presentation, and then we'll have some Q&A. Over to you, Steve.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter, and thanks for everyone for coming along today. As Peter said, this is a follow-on presentation, if you like, from the one I did earlier. Let me just share my presentation with you. And hopefully what I'm going to do today is move LinkedIn on from basically being about profile and actually showing you how it can be used effectively to communicate with almost anyone in the MedComms world, whether you know them or you don't. First, though, just a little bit about me, just so you know, I know the pharma industry. I've got 35 years plus sales and marketing experience in the industry. I've worked in corporate companies such as Roche, smaller startup companies, and in agencies as well. I started using LinkedIn 13 years ago, but probably for the first 8 years or so, I didn't have a Scooby-Doo what I was actually doing with it. But I've now actually been trained, worked on it, and I started Linking Business, my company, 3 years ago, with the objective of helping individuals, companies, and organizations really use LinkedIn more effectively. Social media is great. It allows you to communicate effectively, but frankly, from my point of view, and hopefully from yours as well, it's no good unless it actually does something for your business or your role or your job. And that's what I hope to show you, how to meet the business objectives using LinkedIn. Just a little bit of background. Some of you who were on the previous seminar, webinar will know this, but just to give you an idea of the power of LinkedIn, there are over 500 million users on the site. There are 25 million users in the UK, and this is mainly business-to-business people. It's a professional networking group. I'll refer to it as social media, but I actually think it's far more effective to think of it as online networking. It's free to use. Everything I tell you today can be done with the free version, so you don't have to buy Sales Navigator or the premium version. And what I'm going to do today is talking about finding, connecting, and engaging with your ideal connections and generating leads for your business or for your work. People always ask me, loads of numbers, yeah, that's all very well. But LinkedIn drives a huge amount of traffic to business websites and blogs. And in fact, 50% of all traffic from social media comes from LinkedIn to those sites. That means it's supplying more eyeballs to your B2B website than Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them put together. So it's really key. I don't want to fire off loads and loads of stats at you, but the other two things I think are important is that when people, B2B buyers, are using LinkedIn, 50% of them will use LinkedIn to make a buying decision. So if your profile isn't found, if you haven't got a communication strategy on there, potentially, when you're talking about business-to-business buyers, you could be missing out on 50% of the opportunities there are out there. The other key to LinkedIn is generally it is still believed to be trustworthy. 71% of professionals believe generally what they read on LinkedIn. And if you compare that with any other social media, Facebook or Twitter, God forbid Twitter, but you will find that is a huge number of people who still trust what they read on LinkedIn. So it's important that they're reading what you say on LinkedIn. As I say, there are two elements of LinkedIn. Your profile, which I covered last time, gets you found, should give you value and provides credibility. And it has to work fast. You have 10 seconds. People spend less than 10 seconds looking at a profile before they've decided to move on further. And what you've got on the right there is all that they will look at. They won't go any further than that before they make a decision on whether you are worth spending a bit of time finding out a little bit more about. So very important to have your profile correct. And as Peter said, you can look at my old presentation, my previous webinar there, which gives you top tips to make sure your profile is working effectively. Also, I'm sure Peter will send this out to you, but you can download a book from me on supercharging your LinkedIn profile if you so wish. But what we're going to concentrate now today on is your communication strategy. And what I've called that is how to find, connect, and engage with the people you want as your main connections. And LinkedIn is really terrific at this. And this is the part most people don't really understand with LinkedIn. To help you through it, I've got three gentlemen who are going to help me today. You've probably heard of one of them, the one in the middle, but the others are Frigyes Karinthy, who, believe it or not, is a Hungarian poet, Kevin Bacon of mobile phone fame, and George Boole. And I'll talk about that as we go through. What do they have to do with LinkedIn and using LinkedIn well? Well, Frigyes Karinthy, as I say, was a poet, but in 1929, he wrote a short story called Chain Links. And it was talking about technology. Now, remember, this is 1929, way, way before the internet and the computer age. And he became aware that technology was making links between people closer. And he was the first person who came up with the 6 degrees of separation. Now, I don't know if you've all heard of that, but the idea is with 6 degrees of separation, if you look at anybody in the world, there are only 6 steps between you and any other person in the world. So, for example, I'm 3-4 steps removed from the Queen. I have a client who's a saddle maker. He actually makes saddles for Prince Charles, and obviously Prince Charles is connected to the Queen. So this idea of 6 degrees of separation is really important, and it's key to how LinkedIn works, and how to understand that is how to know how to use LinkedIn effectively. In fact, it's not even 6. Facebook and a lot of social media giants look at this very, very closely. And in fact, what used to be 6 degrees of separation in 1928 is now down to about 4.5. That was in 2016. It'll soon be 4 degrees of separation. Just think of that. That's changes to technology that are causing this, mainly the internet, but mainly social media and networking sites such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Just to add Kevin Bacon in, because I couldn't put 2 people you'd never heard of. Kevin Bacon, there is a game based on this called the Kevin Bacon game. I don't know if any of you have ever heard it. Apparently one wet and windy night in Reading, not in Reading, UK, but over in the US, a group of students were going through random videos. And they were amazed at how often Kevin Bacon came up. He seemed to be on all the videos. So they started looking at the 3 degrees of separation or the 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon. And believe it or not, actors do know their number. The the example they were trying to see, if you look at Johnny Depp on the left there, he appeared in a film called Blow, never heard of it, but there you go, with Kevin Dillon, who is the brother of Matt Dillon, who appeared in Wild Things with Kevin Bacon. So you've got Johnny Depp's number there is 1, 2, 3. His Kevin Bacon number is 3. I know actors know this because I actually had a client who was an actor who'd used improv for sales training. And when I talked to him about this, he said, oh yeah, I know, my number is 3, and he knew exactly how he could connect to Kevin Bacon. Apparently Kevin Bacon hated this until he began to make money from it, and surprise, surprise, he really began to love it then. But frankly, I prefer to be summed up like this. There's 6 pedigrees of separation. The hound that went to obedience school with a spaniel who stayed at a kennel with a collie who lives next door to Kevin Bacon's mutt. The 6 pedigrees of separation. So why have I told you about a Hungarian poet and Kevin Bacon, and even worse, Kevin Bacon's dogs? Well, LinkedIn works intrinsically on this idea of degree of connection. It doesn't work on 6 degrees of connection. It works on 3. And these are called first, second, and third level connections. Now, to demonstrate this, look at the target on the left and imagine yourself as a pixel right in the middle of the target. Your first level connections are people that you have connected with. They've agreed to connect with you. It's mutual, and you can send messages to these people. You can receive, they receive your updates, you receive their updates. Contact information is always available, and they're able to recommend you and help you get closer to their connections. All works fine. Now, all the first degree connections of those first degree connections become your second level connection. And you see, as they're slightly further away, your degree of interaction with them becomes less. So you can find them in search for second degree connections. You can send them invites to connect. You can send them emails, which are a paid for part of the system, but frankly, you don't really need it. And you can be referred to them by your first level connections. Third level connections are people who are first level connections of your second level connections, if you're still with me. You can send invites out to connect to some of these. In fact, though, LinkedIn sets it up to make it look as if you have to pay for a premium version to do that. You don't. You can do it for free. I don't have time to go into it during the presentation, but if anyone wants to know how to connect to a third level connection, apparently unobtainable, let me know and I can send you some information about that. And then you've got out of network. Frankly, these are people who are more than 3 degrees of connection away from you, 4, 5, 6. They're out of your network. And frankly, you will have enough people within your first 3 levels of connection not to worry about them. So in order for LinkedIn to work, what you have to do is begin to increase the number of connections that you have. Why is that? Well, as I say, the more separated people are from you, the less interaction you can have on them, have with them. So what I always recommend is you try to get 500 or more connections. Now, some people will say, oh my God, 500 connections, I'm never going to do that. It's incredible how quickly you can build your connections up, even just going through old colleagues and contacting old colleagues on LinkedIn. If you've got more than 500, that's great. But why is it important to have this larger number of connections? Well, it's the way that the cascade works. On average, believe it or not, people have about 850 connections on LinkedIn currently. So if you have 850 first level connections and they all have 850 first level connections, it gives you theoretically over 700,000 second degree connections. And I won't bother doing the maths, but if you multiply that by 850, there's a hell of a lot of third level connections. Now, It doesn't work like that because there's overlap between members of your network. It's not quite as simple as that, but you get the idea. Basically, what you're doing with LinkedIn is having, even if you just consider your first degree connections, which you can contact at any time and ask to join your network, you have got nearly 750,000 first degree connections that you can search. You can identify individuals and you can ask them to connect with you. And if you ask them in the right way, 60 to 70% of connections of people asking for to be connected with will connect with you. So just think how powerful that is. Back in the dim and distant days, I used to buy email lists. I used to pay hundreds or thousands of pounds for email lists. If I could have got an email list for 750,000 people with their email, contact details, guaranteed contact details, and information about what they do, where they work, and so on, I'd have paid, as I say, thousands of pounds for it. So LinkedIn gives you all of that for free. So you've got a huge pool in which to fish. But why bother with connecting if the numbers aren't enough to convince you? What I want you to start thinking about is LinkedIn as a networking site. By having more connections, it increases your ability. We've seen it increases your ability to search for potential customers, clients, and partners. But having more connections also improves your own LinkedIn search position. If you are searched for and you've got 20 connections, you will come a lot lower down the list than if you're searched for with exactly the same profile and you have 500 connections. It's the way the algorithm works. So it is key to get connections. However, don't think that what I'm saying is connect to everybody. I'm not. Before you connect to somebody, remember quality and relevance to you and what you want to do on LinkedIn is as important as numbers. But I tend to say, certainly when you're starting out, connect rather than don't connect with people. I say quality is important and relevance, and you can only do that if you know who you want to talk to. So before you even go on to LinkedIn, what you need to do is identify who your key target audience are. Are you going to pharma companies? Are you going to medical directors, regulatory managers, directors on LinkedIn? Because they are all out there. You can find hundreds of them. Is the geography or job title important? The industry, obviously, is pharma, but even if you're moving outside pharma, it's a fantastic tool to do that. I had a guy who was a professor of robotics as a client. He'd invented a piece of software that actually made robotic arms more efficient. 25% more efficient. And he wanted to contact people about this. He'd just set up a business and he wanted to sell this software. His target audience were software and mechanical engineers who worked on robotic arms. Not robotics, that wasn't close enough. It had to be robotic arms. And who worked in the automotive industry. Using the techniques I'm just about to take you through, he said, is there anyone like that on LinkedIn? I brought back for him 850 potential connections that met that criteria. Now, that is pretty phenomenal in terms of being able to target people and talk to people. So knowing who you're going to connect with makes a difference to how you search on LinkedIn. How are you going to find them on LinkedIn? Well, there's a number of ways you can do it. First is to go, if you're looking for a company, I wanted to find the marketing directors at Google. They're all on LinkedIn. They're all labeled. You can look at their companies and go through. Likewise, you could do it with Roche or whoever within the pharmaceutical industry. If you wanted to find all the regulatory managers or PR managers at Roche, that is something you could do on LinkedIn. You can also look on groups, and unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of time to go into the group settings on LinkedIn, but go into some of the pharma groups on LinkedIn, and you'll be amazed at the people who are there. Tie in to your offline networking. We all do offline networking. I now never go to an offline networking meeting without making sure that I can connect with people within that group. Don't forget, it's not just the person you're connecting with that's important. It's also the 750, 850 people that they're connected to who go into your network. A little quick tip, look at who's visited your profile. There is a part of LinkedIn, it says who's visited my profile. Go in there and see who's looking at your profile. And don't just look at it and say, oh, that's interesting. Actually do something about it. If you ran a business which was on the high street and somebody came into your shop, walked around, picked up some items, put them down, walked around in front of the counter and then walked out again, you wouldn't be doing your job properly. So look at who visits your profile and then just drop them a nice note saying, thanks for coming by my profile. I hope you found what you wanted. Would you like to connect? I have between 80 and 90% connection rate of people. Now, what they don't know is I've looked at their profile, I know who they are, and they meet my criteria for actually connecting with them. But it's really, really powerful stuff. Just a word of warning, if you're on the free version, you only see the last 5 people who've visited your profile. So you have to go in more frequently to make sure that you don't miss anyone. Finally, in terms of connecting with people, use LinkedIn search. Now, LinkedIn search is, I think, one of the most underused aspects of LinkedIn. It's the little box basically up here. Most people use it to find people whose name they know. So they'll put in a name, Peter Llewellyn, and up will come Peter plus all the other Peter Llewellyns in the search box. But that's limited use. If you want to find new connections, start putting a job title up there. I've just given this as an example. It's not pharma-based. It's an example I used. But if you put United Kingdom, if you put sales director and restricted to United Kingdom, you have, on my network, there are 750,000 of them. Now, that's a bit too much for me to contact on a Saturday afternoon. So then you can use keywords and Boolean search terms to restrict that down. Now, Boolean search terms you've probably heard of and keywords you've heard of. We'll cover that very, very quickly with the next slide. But there's a huge number of filters that you can use. And this is all available on the free version. So you can drill down in terms of are they connected to you and how closely are they connected to you, their geography, their industry, the company, all of these things. In fact, over here, there's another button. It doesn't look like a button, but it is. Click on that and it brings up a whole series of other filters that you can use. And this is all on the free version. So it's a terrific way of finding, well, as I said, the software engineer working on robotic arms in the automotive industry, or the PR manager working on such and such a product at such and such a company. All of those words can be put up into the search box. And finally, we come to the third of our 3 musketeers, George Boole. I won't spend a lot of time on him. A fascinating guy. Born son of a Lincolnshire shoemaker. He was a self-taught mathematician, and he became the first professor of mathematics at Cork University. What he's really known for, though, is the theories that he put behind which led to the foundation of the information age. Who says he's important? Well, Google do. On the anniversary of his death, they actually changed their front page to reflect some of the things that he talked about. Now, some of you will know Boolean search terms, others won't. What you probably don't know is that you can apply Boolean search terms in the box at the top of the search page. So, for those of you who don't, a typical LinkedIn search, and again, I've used sales and marketing as an example. So, if you put marketing or, and the or has to be in capitals, sales, you will find anybody who has a connection with sales or marketing. However, Boolean logic, if you put and, so that you have marketing and, the and has to be in capitals to separate it out, marketing and sales, you find only those who have both sales and marketing expertise and interest. If you want to get rid of everyone from the dark side, as I would call it as a marketeer, and you have marketing, not sales, you come back just with marketing people. Now, I've used commercial terms just to show you how you can do this, but it's terrific in terms of really having a degree of granularity on search terms that you wouldn't believe was possible. So I suggest you test this out on LinkedIn within your own network and see what you can do. Okay, that's how you find people. How do you connect with them? Well, first of all, a few key tips. Do not send the LinkedIn standard connection request. We all get them. Hi, Steve, I'd like to connect with your network. Chris. If I'm going to spend some time deciding whether I want to talk to him or her, at least spend a little bit of time personalizing the message to me. I will connect with people generally who at least personalize their message, use information from the profile to build rapport. They may have been at the same company as you 5-10 years ago, may not even have known them, but say, I notice you were at Roche. I use that as an example because it's one of my companies. And I am building my network in the pharma industry. Would you like to connect? I have found a very, very high connection rate. People generally get LinkedIn and get to know it's about connecting. Another little tip is visit other people's profiles. If you're not quite sure about going straight in there and offering them a connection request, go into somebody and just look at their profile. Say you want to get to the MD of Roche. Go onto his profile and then just sit back, don't do anything. What you find is that even MDs of companies are always interested in who's looked at their profile, and they will tend to look at the profile of the people who have looked at them. Watch your who's looked at my profile, and when they come up, become proactive and go back to them and say, hi, thanks for looking at my profile. I hope you found what you wanted. I would like to connect with you. Huge number of people I've connected with, I'd never believed was possible, was just done by actually visiting their profiles. If all else fails and you have got the premium version, you can use in-mail messaging. You get 15 of these, and this is a message that goes out to anyone. You can get a message through to absolutely anyone on LinkedIn. The problem with that, well, it's not a problem. I tend not to use them. I get 15 a month. They build up. I've got about 45 of them, so I haven't used one of those messages in the last 3 months. So you can do most things without using the paid-for version. But when you're connecting to others, remember you are starting a conversation. Don't go in there, and I'm sure we've all had it, don't go in there with a straight sales message or a message trying to sell your services. Fastest has ever happened to me is about 25 seconds. 25 seconds after connecting to an IT manager, IT director, sales director, who was somebody I wanted to connect with. I had a standard message come back saying, hi Steve, thanks for connecting. We've got a special offer this month on service. Would you like to talk to us about it? Can I ring you? Utterly hopeless. I don't know a server from whatever. I'm not interested in it. I work as a one-man band. I've got all the IT I need. That person was disconnected with immediately. So don't sell start a conversation and provide value. Provide lead magnets, audits, tools, information. Show them what you can do in terms of MedCom. Invite them to download that information, either from your profile or through your profile from a website if you have one. So starting a conversation is key. Okay, so that's a quick run through. How to find, connect, and engage can be summarized like this. Get your profile to a high standard. Download my booklet if you haven't looked at it. Have a plan and a target audience and know what you want to do with that. Grow your network. First target is 500 and carry on growing it after that. That increases the number of connections, second, third line connections you can search for. Once you've got your network started, or even if you haven't, start searching for potential customers or clients. And use your initial contact to start a conversation. Don't try to sell from the start. I can help. Little ad for what Linking Business does. We run a whole series of training workshops, full and half day, one-to-one coaching sessions, and a done-for-you service. But that's what I spend my time doing. So thanks for listening. I hope you got lots of questions, and back to you, Peter.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. That was great. If we can just come out of the slides, go back to the videos, that's perfect. Thank you very much. So that worked very well. Thank you. Comprehensive again. Just for the audience who's online at the moment, just a reminder, you've got a couple of buttons at the bottom of your window, a chat button, a Q&A button. Do use either, basically a couple of text boxes come up, use either of them to share any observations, any comments, or ask any questions. And we would like to be led by you in the next 10 minutes or so for the discussion. So please fire away at will. Can I just start? I know we're talking mostly about connecting, whatever, but in terms of a strategy that one might be thinking about in terms of using LinkedIn, just talk a little bit, can you, about the pluses and minuses of publishing status updates, articles, posts in groups, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And how does that raise your profile?
Yep. Well, let's start with the last one first, Peter. Groups are great, but mainly for joining rather than starting, I have to say. I have found a huge amount of work goes into actually starting a group and maintaining it long term. I see you nodding. I feel the pain, Peter. I know what it's like. Unless you are a full-time social media manager and you have people who are designed to build communities, whose job is to build communities, it's tough. What you can do in terms, sorry, the other part of your question was, sorry, I've forgotten. I took the last bit first.
Yeah, I know, generally articles, what else? Updates.
Yeah, they're very important to build your credibility, to make people, to help people understand what you do and build your credibility and become a center for knowledge on a particular area. You go onto my feed, I'm always talking about LinkedIn. People know me from that as an expert on LinkedIn. I'm always using not just my own tips and hints, but amalgamating other people's and reposting those, so they've got a single place to go to. It is really useful, really helpful, but it's more on the building credibility and standing. Just because you do that, people aren't automatically going to come to your door. You have to have the proactive bit that I've been talking about, actually approaching them and talking to them direct.
Yeah, okay. And I think one of the things, again, managing expectations is important. I don't know whether you know the numbers. I don't know the numbers, but let's just take them separately. So a status update, for instance, I use quite a lot, to try and tell people what I'm doing within my community. But about a year, 18 months ago, if I've got the right timing, the algorithms all changed. And suddenly, instead of most people in my community or connections seeing a status update, most of them didn't. I think it's dropped to like 20%, 10%, something like that. So, that you can stick something on LinkedIn and most people don't see it. That's a fair?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, you're the same as me. I went from getting literally hundreds of views of my status updates, and particularly the long form articles that I used to do. Literally, people were looking at them. I went from hundreds to tens. 700 became 70, and that was absolutely, as you said, the algorithm changed. But it's changed on all social media sites. LinkedIn are notorious. They will not tell you what their algorithms do for obvious reasons. People will play the game with them, but it's about 20%, and it's not as bad as Facebook, for example. I think Facebook's about 5%. You think you're connecting, you're sending a message out to all your connections. It's not. It's only going out to 5%. The good thing is and it's worth actually working together as a group on this. If a post gets a lot of looks or views early on, it will then be released not to the 20% of your population, but to 40% and then 60%. So actually, it's worth, if you want to put it together, gaming that and getting a group of people who will all support one another's posts.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I do play games a little bit with this, so managing expectations is the first important point I wanted to make. Secondly, it's the idea that you're touching on, that if you can get people to share, well, A, to look at it, B, to react to it, C, to share, as it were, and then it's quite interesting without understanding the algorithms at all. You can see a post suddenly go, viral. In MedComms terms, that isn't the same as in other people's terms, but you can see it go quite wide quite quickly, and it's awesome when it happens. I just defy anybody to know quite how to make it happen, and I know there are people who will insist they can, but I think but having said that, my personal advice and my advice myself is be active. Don't be not active, because then you're not seen at all. Be active, but as I say, manage the expectations of it. The same with the articles. The groups I find fascinating. I mean, I have gone through pain barriers several times running groups. I've got 5,000 members of a MedComms networking LinkedIn group. Very few people say anything, and it does take a certain amount of time just keeping the spam out or whatever. But I think it's huge. I mean, I find it hugely frustrating, but I don't know what the magic answer is. At the end of the day, it's there for people to talk to each other. If they're not going to talk to each other, it's very difficult to force them, sort of thing. But again, I think it's worth people thinking, they just be a bit braver, and if someone is asking a question, do join in and answer or something. The group owner probably thinks, thank goodness for that. That's engaging. But actually, those little things actually make a huge difference, and it is what it is about, is networking and so on.
But also, Peter, the important thing about interacting with groups, as opposed to building your own, which is the really tough job. Monitor them. You can actually use a search box to search content, which again, a lot of people don't know. But monitor the groups that you're in, and as you say, get involved. Start answering questions. LinkedIn, you have to give a lot away free in terms of knowledge to build your reputation and standing. It's all about building your reputation and standing, and it can take a while, but it does work. So monitor those sites or those groups that have people you want to talk to, and provide advice.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a question in from Caroline. Let's talk about the recruiter question. So, a question from Caroline. Am I correct in ignoring recruiters' requests to connect if I have no relationship with them? What would your view on that one be? It's a common complaint, isn't it, that the recruiters sort of...
Yeah, and things are going to get more interesting on the how should we say, the job front with LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw last night, they've just launched a national TV advertising campaign about finding your job on LinkedIn. I was even up at the up in London the other day. They've got LinkedIn on the side of double-decker buses now, so they're having a huge push, and it's not really surprising because they want to keep their recruiters happy. Recruiters pay hundreds of pounds a month for their seats at LinkedIn. They have access to far more information than the rest of us do, but they pay hundreds of pounds for that. Are you correct in ignoring them? I would say, well, it all depends what your objective is. There may well be reasons why you want to connect with them, but saying that you're not looking for a role, always remember it's not just the recruiters you're connecting with, it's their connections. And while some recruiters will hide their connections, which makes it less effective for you, I generally connect to recruiters, make it clear that I'm not actually looking for a job, but connect with them anyway. But it is you can go either way on that. But what I really want to do is get access to their connections. Remember, of course, that's what they're doing with you as well. They are trying to get access to your connections.
Yeah. I had a connection request the other day from a recruitment search consultant person. Very pleasant, can I connect with you? And basically she said because I'm doing a project for someone, and then I want to use your network. I mean, she effectively said that. So I just grinned, connected, and wrote back and said no problem at all. And then I said, do I share the fee? And I thought it was a quite reasonable question, but I got a slightly tongue-in-cheek reply to that. But I think, again, it depends on your position, does it? So I talk to freelancers. Let's do some examples of freelancers who seem to get cross about recruiters contacting them. I'm not sure that I fully follow the logic of that, because they might have work for you.
Yeah.
But also, I'm right in saying, aren't I, because I do get a bit confused with this stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can specifically turn off your profile effectively, or at least you can say, I am not interested in work opportunities.
Yes. And in fact, it's set at the default setting, which is I'm not interested. Sometime you would have done that. Watch out for the default settings, because LinkedIn change them every so often. And what you've been happy and comfortable with, you suddenly start getting recruiters in, and you find they've changed the default setting. But yes, you can hide your profile. I really wouldn't advise hiding your profile, but what you can do is set a limit on who can see your connections, if you're worried about that. It does stop anybody looking at who your connections are.
Okay.
And some people like doing that. I had a client who imported furniture and sold furniture. He wanted his connections left alone because his customers potentially see his suppliers, and as a consequence, cut him out of the line completely. So there are some times when you need to hide your connections.
Okay. Just bouncing around a couple of things here. When you're searching, go back to searching people's profiles. I know you can filter to an extent, but if you just basically search for something, what on someone's profile, what is it searching?
It's searching the whole profile.
The whole thing, is it?
Yeah. So, but it does prioritize. There are certain sections of your profile, and when you look through my my ebook, you'll find this. Your headline, which most people have as a job title, actually that's got 120 characters, and that is the second most important thing when being searched for. They will look for words in there that are key. So if there is a must-have search term that you want to be involved with, you're working in oncology, for example, and you really want that to stay up, that should be in your headline. It then goes on to look at what's now called the About Me section. It's dumbing down. It used to be called the summary. Summary has 2,000 characters in it. That's where you need to put the search terms you want to be found for, and that's where it's not complicated SEO. It's just making sure you have the phrases in there that work effectively.
Okay. So let's pick up on that question. Alan's just texted in. Just another question or two, and then we'll wrap up for the recording. But Alan Thomas saying great information. So I'm toying with joining. So I guess Alan, toying with joining LinkedIn. Okay. So you're not on at the moment, Alan. So okay, get on there. Just wondering about the time-consuming aspect. All social media is time-consuming. I'm not sure there's an answer to that question beyond agreeing that it can be time-consuming, although you can control it. But I guess, again, you've got a couple of comments to help Alan think that one through.
Yeah, sure. First of all, glad you found the information and knowledge useful. I'd say, Alan, you are missing out by not being on LinkedIn. It is absolutely key to working in the professional world today. I put it as bluntly as that. I'm not affiliated to LinkedIn anyway. I just talk about sales. I just talk about how to use it. It doesn't need to be all time consuming. And what I wouldn't recommend is you go away from here, join LinkedIn, try to do everything on LinkedIn all at once. It's like eating the elephant. What's the best way of eating an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So I'd spend 15 or 20 minutes a day working on LinkedIn. First of all, to get your profile up and running, and then about the same amount of time per day. And don't forget, you can do it when you're traveling. The mobile app, you can do just about everything on your mobile app now that you do on a desktop with LinkedIn, with the LinkedIn app. Do 15 or 20 minutes consistently. You may say that's not a lot, Steve, doesn't sound a lot, but at the end of the month, you would have made a huge piece of progress, and it would be a habit to you. And once you start doing that, that's the most effective way of doing it.
I mean, I do always say this a bit flippantly, but I do get contacted with quite a few people. My first reaction is to go and look to see who they are on LinkedIn. And if I don't find them on LinkedIn, I mean, I literally just ask myself, is that a real person? And my thought process goes from there. But I think people underestimate that and how fast people are making those sorts of decisions. Just one point I just thought I'd mention, because I find that I'd love to know more about the backstory, and I haven't got the backstory, but just one quick point. You made a comment about it generally believed to be trustworthy, and I would say that definitely. But it does intrigue me. I was informed, it's going back a few weeks now, that one of my connections who said they worked at an agency didn't exist. And basically there's no way of knowing that, I suppose. So you do have to just keep that at the back of your mind.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling because there was a very interesting article I read about 2 years ago on fake accounts on LinkedIn, and I'm not denying it. Foolish to deny there are. I hate to tell you, what it said was if the profile picture looks absolutely male or woman outstanding, take a copy of the picture and do a back search for it on Google. And what you find is a lot of them are taken from model agencies. Which sort of tells you exactly where it is. I'm not saying that's all the case. And I do think I've never come across anyone myself. I've got about 2,500 connections, and I'm talking LinkedIn, on LinkedIn all the time. I've never personally come across one that I was able to show was a fake account, but they are out there.
And it's just thinking about it, isn't it? Because you're not going to go through that process every time. So it's just bearing in mind that it has changed my attitude slightly, knowing that's the critical thing. What I'm going to do, I'm sorry, I've got one eye on the time, and we are a little bit longer than I was expecting for the recording. So if I could, just for the moment, bring the recording part of this to an end. So all being well, and I'm sure it'll be fine, this recording will be on NetworkPharma TV a little bit later on. But for those of you who are attending the live meeting, do stick around unless you have to rush away. Basically stick around because we will carry on talking to the top of the hour. But for now, I'd like to say a huge thanks to Steve. By definition, Steve would be very happy to hear from you. Reach out and connect and so on. He's given you his contact details. He's easily findable on LinkedIn. So after the meeting, do reach out and say hello. Big thanks to you, Steve, again.
You're very welcome.
Again, a reminder that the previous webinar is on NetworkPharma TV, which focused on the profile. This was much more about what you do once you've got a profile, making connections. So I hope everyone's enjoyed it. And a big thank you to Steve. So what I usually do at this stage is say, wave goodbye, Steve, and I'll stop the recording.
Cheers.
Au revoir, everyone.